proposed revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union. America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Our governing class has often been paralyzed. The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Bigotry seems emboldened. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
Hello and welcome everybody to another reading of Codeword Barbelon 666, Danger in the Vatican. Today we are on chapter 19, Hitler, Mussolini, Marx, and Stalin, good students of the Jesuits. And I'm joined here with Jörg Glismann. Jörg.
Yes.
And this is a very, very interesting topic. I wish that I would have heard about this years ago, you know? I just would have never, ever thought that the sinister hand of the Jesuit order would be behind all this.
Well, yeah, for me it helps already that I read the book Behind the Dictators and the Secret History of the Jesuits, at least in German. In English, I'm still 40 pages short of finishing the book. Mm-hmm. But you're right. If only I had known earlier, you know.
Yeah.
If only the world would do what it promises to do.
Yeah, that
by sending your children or us as we were children to school to actually learn real history, and by that being prepared for the whiles to come. But since we are sent to school that is organized and controlled by the Roman Catholic Church, the Antichrist, of course, does not want us to know that we are indoctrinated by him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we walk through life without even understanding of all this. And listen, I will start in that book directly because I'm really looking forward to read that chapter. But I just want to tell you that I just went to the mailbox and I received a letter from these wonderful people I told you about from Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Because I answered them in a personal letter after they sent me that package. And the day after I received that package, and I already sent my answering letter, I received another letter with the information about Luther against the Jews, you know?
Right.
On which I then made 5 videos in total. 2 are uploaded up to today on the 23rd of February, but I will upload part 3 tomorrow on Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
But today I got another letter from those persons, and I'm not revealing anything important. I mean, personal, important, yes, otherwise I wouldn't speak about it.
Right.
But I'm not revealing anything personal about this. But this made me almost cry, you know. It's a little letter where they put in a few CDs, something about thanking God and that stuff, so I have to listen to that. They even set an index of what is on these CDs. Another part of CDs about Johann Sebastian Bach, who you probably know as a musician.
Yes.
The big story about him from the archives of the GDR, the former East German Democratic Republic, as it called itself. And especially a handwritten letter, because I also sent a handwritten letter as an answer, wherewith I learned a lot of things, among others, that this person also has to endure a very heavy burden here on earth and taking care of handicapped people in her personal life. And then on the back of this letter, believe it or not, she sent me a 50 euro note from people who have it that hard for themselves already. And she spares 50 euro to support me, because she knows that I have it hard too, and supports me on that. And I'm just, almost crying here.
Right.
Because this really goes to my heart. The world is not that bad in total as we always understand it, because we study the Jesuits. There are many, many kind people in this world. The problem is that often they just don't know each other. And this work that I am doing and you are doing, that we are doing together with this reading of Codeword Barbelon, the other work that you are doing on your channel and that I'm doing on my channels, to tell the people the truth about this world, leads to that we can here and there connect, we, the true church, the Bible-believing Christians, the people who have really a heart, who really give above somebody else, who really know what love and what really charity is. Not charity in the names of the Antichrist, but charity in the names of the gospel.
There we go.
And this letter that I just received is another sign of that. And I want to thank, even probably she's probably never going to listen to this English recording, but I don't care. It's not about her. It's about that the world knows how grateful I am for that. And that even though that we are reading here Codeword Barbelon and the Sons of Loyola's way to control the whole world and make it all evil. When you go to the mailbox and you pick up something like this, all of a sudden you see a little light sparkling. And it is that we have to embrace, and that we have sometimes to be reminded of. And I'm very grateful for that, and just wanted to share that with you in the beginning of this reading. How much I appreciate contact from this person in Frankfurt in Germany. And I'm almost lost for words, So then it's probably better to turn to the book, because then it's P.D. Stuart speaking, not me.
Right.
But
and this is
I wanted
really
to share. I
interesting.
think it's important.
Yes, wonderful, Jörg. And that's always just a really special thing to get some contact and support, in any form is always good. And, I feel it from time to time. I know there are people praying for me out there, because I just feel it. I know it. And, the least I can do is just do my best to pray again and ask the Lord to bless his people and to help those that are entangled in this world come to better biblical grasp on where we're headed, because we're headed for a really disturbing place here in this world really soon. We don't know when, but we know it's coming. And every day we need to be prepared for that. So,
as Jesus Christ told us, when you profess my name in this world, you will have tribulation.
Yes. Yep.
But don't despair, he said. I have overcome the world, and so are we through him.
That's it. Yep. That's right. For his
anyway,
glory.
It's still sunny outside. I mean, sunny. It's of course 5:45.
Wonderful.
A quarter to 6. So I hope that I don't have to switch on the light. But if I have to, then I just switch on the light. For the moment, it's still good working with the natural light we have outside.
All right, let's go
And we have come to page 195 for the ones who are reading along in their own copy of the book, chapter 19, as Bret already said, Hitler, Mussolini, Marx, and Stalin. Good students of the Jesuits. I would even add here probably Francisco Franco from Spain.
Oh,
the Spanish dictator over there.
Mm.
And of course, I mean, if you wanna go there, you can put Ho Chi Minh and all these other stuff, and Pol Pot and all the other Catholic and Jesuit trained people in there. But let's, for the moment, keep it on Hitler, Mussolini, Marx, and Stalin. We start with a quote from Emanuel Riebold that goes, "Catholicism governed all. The whole fabrication moved upon wheels, representing the great object for which the Society of Jesus was organized." Unquote. And another quote, where the source is not given, reads, "The regulations and the spiritual exercises prescribed by Ignatius of Loyola were the model Himmler tried to copy exactly." Well, we will probably come into that quote again during the reading of this chapter. That is a very well-known quote that Himmler prescribed to the model of Ignatius of Loyola by founding his SS, Sicherheitsservice, what it is short for, SS, Sicherheitsstaffel, actually. And what most of the people do not know, who are reading probably along, because I don't think that is mentioned here, is that an uncle of Himmler was a confidant of Halke Lidokowski. Halke Lidokowski, of course, was the general superior of the Jesuits during and before World War II, until the beginning of World War II, and then he got killed. So Himmler had blood family related, who was a very close confidant to the Society of Jesus' general at that time. So, of course, Himmler was from top to bottom Jesuit controlled. This is just information I give you. And another information before we go into this little chapter, go to the website spirituallysmart.com. Spirituallysmart.com, and you can do wonderful research about the Jesuit connections into the Second World War. You will learn that, for example, Jesuit Father Stempfle wrote Mein Kampf. Not Hitler wrote that book. Hitler was unable to write the book. He was a stupid idiot. He only read newspapers. He never read a book. And Jesuit Father Stempfle ghostwrote that book, and he was killed in 1934 in concentration camp Dachau. So that information did not come out, but it came out anyway. And this information, like other information, you can get on spirituallysmart.com. Just when you have the time and want to do research on this subject, have a look at that website. Now, to start on page 195 in chapter 19, P.D. Stuart says, "Few people have since matched Ignatius Loyola's zeal, his discipline, or his calculating cruelty." Since when? Well, the regulations and the spiritual exercises prescribed by Ignatius of Loyola were the model Himmler tried to copy exactly. The spiritual exercises. Few people have since matched Ignatius Loyola's zeal, his discipline, or his calculating cruelty. Few people, I say, apart from Hitler, Mussolini, Marx, and Stalin, and allow me, Jörg, to insert many other people who we don't speak about at this moment in the book. All good students of the Jesuits. This zealot, called Loyola, was described by the police records of his town as violent, vindictive, and dangerous. His philosophy of the utility and of violence and Machiavellian diplomacy was expressly incorporated into the constitutions and the extreme oath he penned for his order. It was the enduring legacy of this irascible rascal that prompted James Aitken Wiley to lament, quote, "What a harvest of plots, tumults, seditions, revolutions, torturings, poisonings assassinations, regicides, and massacres has Christendom reaped from the seed sown by the Jesuits. Unquote. Yes, it is a little-known fact that Hitler, Mussolini, Marx, and Stalin, the rah-rah boys of Europe, were all trained by Jesuits. This leading fact is too often ignored by historians and is very important to understand. All of these men would later become the vassals of the school of Loyola after having been under the blighting influence of the Jesuits. Even Kurt Heinrich Himmler, he was the head of Hitler's SS, and Joseph Goebbels, who was Hitler's official minister of enlightenment and propaganda, were both Jesuit priests. In full communion with the Church, the predicates contained in these statements are explosive. They implicate the hand of the Roman Catholic Church in the First and Second World Wars, as well as in the Communist Revolution. This is the smoking gun, and we intend to prove beyond all reasonable shadow of doubt that Jesuitism was the source from whence all these evils sprang. Communist and fascist leaders, all Jesuit students. The father of communism, Karl Marx, was trained by the Jesuits inside the British Museum in 1848. Likewise, Joseph Stalin studied at the Jesuit seminary in Tiflis, Soviet Georgia, to be educated for the priesthood. Bret, you think of the footnotes?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so whenever there is something, just interrupt me then, okay?
Please.
Stalin, who trained for the Jesuit priesthood, was Lenin's right-hand man in 1922, when Lenin formally lifted the official ban of the Jesuits in Soviet Russia. Stalin and Lenin were both Jesuit-trained Jews, Bolsheviks, and Grand Orient Lodge 33rd degree Freemasons. Here is another fact worthy of mention. On page 21 of the book The Rise of Nations in the Soviet Union, published by none other than the Council of Foreign Relations, we learn more about the Jesuit influence in Russia under Stalin. This book quotes Friedrich Engels, who wrote, quote, "Russian diplomacy formed a kind of new Jesuit order, quite powerful enough to overcome even the Tsar's whims, and it is this secret society, the Jesuits, recruited mostly from foreign aristocrats, that has lifted the Russian state to its present position of power." Unquote.
Comment.
Now, yeah, please.
Yes, Jörg, I just wanted to direct the listeners back to this sentence here. A couple paragraphs ago, Stalin, who trained for the Jesuit priesthood, was Lenin's right-hand man in 1922 when Lenin formally lifted the, quote, official ban, unquote, on the Jesuits in Soviet Russia. Stalin and Lenin were both Jesuit-trained Jews, Bolsheviks, and Grand Orient Lodge 33rd degree Freemasons. Now, in America here, in our Washington, D.C., just north of the White House, is a 33rd degree temple. Now, why on earth would our government allow that damn thing to be built if we don't use 33rd degree Freemasonry in Washington, D.C., right there? And look at the thing. Go type it in Google and look at that thing. What a hideous thing. And this is in our government? Washington, D.C.? I mean, this ought to wake people up to how old this really has been. There's nothing new under the sun here. You know, This has been going on for a long time. And those who venerate Freemasonry as something worthwhile, come on, get a grip. You know, we just had this Freemason, what's his name? This idiot. What's his name?
Whom are you trying to remember?
Billy Graham. Just
Billy
died.
Graham.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that video from Nicholas from Presence of God Ministry.
Yep.
That somebody on the television said that he is more alive than ever because he's in heaven, blah, blah, blah. I didn't even know that he died. So, yeah,
right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't either. I could care less. But to tell you the truth, the people, you know, like I was talking with my mom the other day, and she... You know, actually, oh, yeah, he was an evangelist. Yeah, an evangelist for what? Mom, you know, she just doesn't put it together because she's never looked at it critically. I says, Mom, you got to look at this critically. If you don't, you're going to miss out. And I don't know. You know, I don't know. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I'm just going to say it anyway, you know? She needs to know. But yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it should send shivers down any American's spine to know that we venerate Freemasonry in this country, and no one ever talks about it. Like it's, you know, oh, they're just good old boys. You know, nothing wrong here.
Okay, so because you are reading that sentence again, I want to turn the attention of our listeners and viewers of the video to the fact that in that quote it is said here, Stalin and Lenin were both Jesuit-trained Jews. You know why that is important? Because there are so many people who say, "Oh, it's a
Jewish conspiracy."
Jews.
Yeah,
it's the Jews who rule. Look, and Stalin was a Jew. Yeah, even if he was a Jew, I don't care. He was Jesuit trained, so who did he pay his allegiance to? Rome. It is not a Jewish conspiracy, it's a Roman conspiracy all the way. And interesting, I think also, is that, as you read in the beginning, in 1922, when Lenin formally lifted the official ban of the Jesuits in Soviet Russia, you know, the Jesuits were banned in Russia at that time, that's right. But you have to remember, for example, during the time of the Jesuit abolishment, 1773 until 1814, the Jesuits got a safe haven in two places in the world. One was Prussia, and one was Russia. So Russia with a P and Russia without a P. Russia and Prussia. A little later on, during, for example, the American Civil War, the Tsar at that time supported Abraham Lincoln and fought on the side of Abraham Lincoln and prevented Navy armament coming to the United States of America, which would have severed the war over there. And also, therefore, the Jesuits wanted payback on Russia. That's why they killed the whole line of the Tsarist family in 1917 with their Bolshevik Revolution. That's why they killed them all off and did not leave one drop of blood of that family over. Romanovs was the Romanov family, the Tsar family at that time. That was payback for the intervening of the Tsar during that war. Even though Russia a little earlier was one of the only countries that gave a safe haven to the Jesuits during their abolishment. I just think that that is maybe an interesting little side note that not many people are aware of, and interesting to mention here. It says then that they were only Jesuit-trained Jews, but also that they were Bolsheviks. Now, Bolshevik is just the other name they go by, communist, in the time before they founded communism over there. So they were communists. And who founded communism? Well, the Jesuits in the reductions of Paraguay in the 16th and 17th century.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Thank you.
And
That's right.
And then they were part of the Grand Orient Lodge 33rd degree Freemasons. Well, who controls Freemasonry on the top? Who brought Freemasonry into life? The Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, whether they are Jesuit-trained Jews who pay their allegiance to Rome, Bolsheviks means communists who have their offspring from Rome,
Mm-hmm.
or the Grand Orient Lodge Freemasons who has also their basis in Rome. It's all Rome who is in control. And this is important to understand when you read and understand a sentence like this. Okay? So thank you very much, Bret, for your
You're welcome.
bringing that to our attention so that we could go a little bit deeper into this little sentence there. And I don't know, you check the footnotes, right?
I
so
am,
that I don't have to do that.
Right.
Good. So the Jesuit order, P.D. Stuart continues on the bottom of page 196, thus became, again, there's a type fault here, but, the Russian diplomatic corps. Then there was Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator and fascist leader. He, too, was trained by Jesuits in Geneva, Switzerland, at the Gymnase Cantonale de Neuchâtel. On coming to power in Italy, he appointed as his advisor and confessor a Jesuit father, Pietro Tacchi Venturi, who was the powerful secretary of the Society of Jesus. Most people would be blown out of their cotton socks to learn that it was the Jesuits who perfected the tenets of communism for the overthrow of Tsarist Russia in the Revolution of February 1917. History confirms that Grigory Efimovich Rasputin, spiritual counselor to the Tsar, exercised sinister and mysterious control over the imperial Russian family just before the Soviet Revolution. The magical and lustful Rasputin was a faithful Catholic monk working undercover, a crypto-Jesuit working to undermine the Tsar. According to Jack Chick, quote, no one suspected that the magical powers Rasputin used were the spiritual exercises of Loyola, unquote. When Lenin finally arrived in Moscow after the Tsar's overthrow, crowds of Orthodox civilians and soldiers greeted him with banners and icons of the Virgin Mary, unquote. Insurrection, said Lenin, is an art. This he learned from the Jesuits. Hitler's confession of faith. I am now, as before, a Catholic and will always remain so. This said Adolf Hitler to Gerhard Engel, one of his generals, in 1941. Further proof of Hitler's allegiance to Catholicism is evidenced from the fact that in 1941 a Croatian Catholic, Dr. Ante Pavelic, formed the Ustasha, or Ustashi, the leaders of which were all Dominican and Franciscan monks, thus making the Ustasha an integral part of the Roman Catholic Church. In 1941, Adolf Hitler put the Ustasha into power in compliance with the Vatican Third Reich Concordat of July 20th, 1933. The Poglavnov, that is the name of the leader, Ante Pavelic, of this independent state of Croatia that was cut out of Yugoslavia during the Second World War to get rid of the Serbs. If you want to know a little bit more about the Poglavnik, about Alois Stepinak, who we are going to read in the next paragraph, if you want to read more about Ante Pavelic, if you want to read and understand more about the Dominican and Franciscan orders, not only monks but also nuns being involved in the persecution, in the torture and execution of at least 500,000 Serbs during the Second World War in Croatia through the Ustasha, I advise you to go to my English readings. I don't know if they are uploaded yet. As of today, they are not, of course. I get into five videos, I think, only in the subject of this independent state of Croatia, the NDH, as it was called, during the book reading of The Secret History of the Jesuits by Edmond Paris in my English. There you get really a very deep analysis of that fact.
Comment.
Because I really, just a second.
Sure,
I really
please.
worked myself through a lot of information through that and put that in 5 videos of each of an hour only on that subject. So please avail yourselves to these videos. Yes, Bret, please.
Okay, so you were telling me to look at the footnotes, and we need to go back a little bit before this Hitler's Confession of Faith here. It's on page 196, just after the quote from Frederick Engels. The Jesuits order tous. What is tous? Thus, maybe thus, right? The Jesuits
that's why I told you
thus.
there's another printing mistake.
Sorry about that. Quote, the Russian diplomatic corps, unquote. Paul Blackstock, the Russian menace to Europe. All right. Then there was Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator and fascist leader. He too was trained by the Jesuits in Geneva, Switzerland, at the Gymnasium?
Yeah, actually, you should pronounce it gymnasium.
Gymnasium.
Like you say in English, gymnasium. But
see.
A gymnasium in American English is just a big gathering hall, and in Germany it is a high school.
I get it. Okay, got it.
And the canton is a province. Switzerland is split into different cantons. Every canton is comparable with a state or with a province.
I see. Got it.
The Neuchâtel. And Neuchâtel is another writing for Neuf Château, and that is French for Newcastle. Yeah? So at the high school of in the canton, in the region of Newcastle.
So this is Benito Mussolini on coming to power in Italy. He appointed as his advisor and confessor a Jesuit father, Pietro
Tacciventuri. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, who was the powerful secretary of the Society of Jesus. So if we look at footnote 3 here, Benito Mussolini came to power in Italy in 1922, promising the Italian people glory and greatness. Yeah. Wow. Imagine that. He intended to create a new Roman Empire. Wow. Look at that.
And he was not lying.
No, he really wasn't, was he?
How did he do that?
Through the Jesuits, of course. Just being
More
a puppet.
specific. More specific.
Go ahead.
How did he build a new Roman Empire?
Oh, well, of course he.
On the 11th of February 1929.
Right, there you go.
He signed the Lateran Treaty.
There you go.
And he gave the papacy back its temporal power that he had lost in 1866.
Yep.
The wound of Revelation 13.
Thank you.
That's why they speak of Mussolini as a quote-unquote man of providence.
Yes. Yep. Yep, and they call Rome the Eternal City.
Yeah.
What a joke.
Yeah.
All right, Jörg. I just had to comment that.
That's
Catch us
right.
up to speed because I'm a little slow this morning. And maybe
that's okay.
Cool.
That's okay. I guess that the viewers of the video and the listeners of this video will bear with you that it is still in the morning. Over the morning, okay. It's 10. It's 11.
Yeah.
It's 11 past. But anyway, let's continue and give the people some more information in this wonderful little chapter here. On the bottom of page 197, P.D. Stuart continues and says that under that concordat that we just mentioned, that Adolf Hitler signed with the Vatican on July 20th, 1933, and you have to understand that he came to power at the end of March. Less than half a year after Hitler came to power, he signed already this very important concordat with the Roman Catholic Church. Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Under that concordat, Dr. Ante Pavelic, the dictator of Croatia, with the direct aid of the Archbishop of Zagreb, Cardinal Aloysius Stepinac, instructed the Ustasha to implement a program of forced, quote-unquote, conversion of the Croatia population to Catholicism. 840,000 people were murdered. You know, these numbers vary from 500,000 to plus than 1 million, depending on what source you are reading. But here it says 840,000 people were murdered when they refused to become Roman Catholics.
Now the footnote goes to Candy Nugget News, so I wouldn't take that number seriously.
No,
that's a lot of people, man. 840.
Yeah, there are sources, Brett, that speak of even more than 840,000.
Oh, yeah, right, exactly.
But, so that's not the point. The point is, we are speaking of a quote-unquote forced conversion.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about that, there is a book out, if you can get your hands on it, from Edmond Paris, the author of The Secret History of the Jesuits, who wrote also a book that is called Convert or Die, that deals with nothing else but the NDH, the independent state of Croatia, during the Second World War between 1941 and 1945. Convert or die. That is the policy of the Roman Catholic Church. That was the policy all during the Inquisition. Not even only to convert, but you just had to repent. You just had to admit your faults, even though you didn't know what your faults were during the Inquisition. If you didn't do that because you didn't know what you did wrong, you were tortured. When you then gave in into the torture and you confessed, they killed you anyway. That's the Roman Catholic Church, people.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most widely respected studies of Vatican involvement in the Croatia genocide is The Silence of Antichrist Pope Pius XII by Carlo Falconi. Falconi states that 299 Orthodox churches were destroyed. Some 300 Orthodox priests and 5 bishops were murdered, and some 400 Orthodox priests were transported to concentration camps. The Ustasha also assassinated the King of Yugoslavia, Alexander I, who was against the Nazi Catholic alliance. In an official document dated as late as May 8, 1944, His Eminence Archbishop Stepinac, head of the Catholic hierarchy in Nazi Croatia, who was later convicted of war crimes, informed the Holy Father that to date 244,000 Orthodox Serbs have been converted to the Church of God. After the genocide and conversions were over, the Ustasha moved much of their loot, mostly gold, to Rome, where it still sits, enriching the Vatican's coffers, or probably taken to Switzerland. I mean, this is a can of worms that we open here.
Sneaky one, yeah.
Yeah,
Really
Stepinac,
is.
for example, Pavlovich, the leader of the independent state of Croatia at that time, he fled through to Argentina via the Vatican Red Lines, and you can read that in the book The Real Odessa by Ucigoni. And I have that book, and I will read chapter 3 of that book during the reading of Secret History of the Jesuits at a later part. So I'm in the last 40 pages, and somewhere in that later part I will include the chapter 3 of that book from Ucigoni. That's also very interesting for you to get when you have the possibility. It is not that expensive. You can get that today. Ucigoni, The Real Odessa. Huh? Yes, yet in spite of the lawful conviction of Archbishop Aloysius Stepinac for war crimes and genocide, the most celebrated pope of modern times, John Paul II, went to Zagreb in 1998 where he knelt and prayed before the glass-encased, embalmed body of Cardinal Stepinac at a ceremony for the beatification of that convicted war criminal. And I have a picture on my computer of that fact, where John Paul II kneels before the glass-encased, embalmed body of Cardinal Stepinac. So maybe Bret can put that in this video here, and you can have a look at that fact. This is why this book is not conspiracy theory. It is all conspiracy fact, documented. And that picture is in one of the videos that I told you about on the secret history of the Jesuits. So if you don't see the picture in this video, then avail yourselves to my book reading of the secret history of the Jesuits in English, and there you will find it. It is also an established fact of history, continues P.D. Stuart, that Catholic nuns prepared uniforms, emblems, and medical equipment for Ustashi detachments. The plans for the campaign were published in advance in a directive from Dr. Simak, Bishop of Krivitsky, to his clergy in the official bishopric news of Krivitsky, No. 2, 1942. It was titled Directive Regarding the Conversion of the Members of the Eastern Orthodox Church in Slavonia, Sirjem, and Bosnia, and reads as follows, quote, special offices and church committees must be created immediately for those to be converted. Let every curate remember that these are historic days for our mission, and we must under no circumstances let this opportunity pass. Now we must show with our work that we have been talking about for centuries in theory. We have done very little until now because we are afraid of complaints from the people. Our universal mission, our Catholic mission, is involved in this issue. Our work is legal because it is in accord with official Vatican policy. Unquote.
Wow.
This, when you dive into this independent state of Croatia, NDH stuff, you really open a can of worms. I can assure you that. I was appalled when reading that, and I think, Bret, weren't you a part? Weren't you on me on a recording of mine during one of the parts?
Yeah, I was. That's right. We were in. You mean the secret history of the Jesuits? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I was. Yeah, I can't recall the title of the chapter, but yep, that's right.
No, but it had to do with the NDH at that time. So
yeah, that's right. And I posted up one of your videos too on my channel of that. And yeah, that is really appalling. All right.
Yeah, so then that is to be found there. Now, the next question that we have to deal with is, was Hitler a Jesuit? Interesting is more that stuff that comes behind this question. Reading between the lines. That is what you have to do when you read books like this. When you read books like The Secret History of the Jesuits, like Convert or Die, Vietnam, Why Did We Go, The Vatican Billions, all these books about the Jesuit order. You have to read between the lines. So now let's see what P.D. Stuart has to tell us about if Hitler was a Jesuit. Hitler was not only a faithful son of the Catholic Church, he was also a good student of the Jesuits. Said Hitler, quote, I have learned much from the order of the Jesuits. Until now, there has never been anything more grandiose on the earth than the hierarchical organization of the Catholic Church. I transferred much of this organization into my own party. He then ended his speech abruptly, saying, I can't say any more. And this is a quote that is very often refuted during from researchers of the matter, because Hermann Rauschning, in his book Hitler m'a dit, that is the original title in French, Hitler m'a dit, which stands for in English, Hitler told me, or Hitler said to me, that they say that this quote is, he pulled that out of his nose like a bugger. That's what they say. Because he was, I think, in the other room when he heard Hitler say that. But Rauschning, well, if you are really interested in, I can only advise you then go and get his book, Hitler m'a dit, or Hitler said to me. There are many students of history, like we are, who have read this quote, and it is quoted over and over and over again. And the point is that if we go back a page, there we already understood, or 2 pages, no, it's 1 page. There we already understood that Himmler was made the top of the SS, which was founded after the Jesuit order, right? And here he just says he transformed much of his organization into his own party, the NSDAP, National Socialist Working Party, Workers' Party at that moment. And then he ended this abruptly saying, I can't say no more. No, because he was then speaking, or would then be starting to speak, about secret societies. And Hitler never ever spoke about about secret societies, only in this one very well-known speech where he condemns Freemasonry and all secret societies. And this, I tell you, is the policy that Tapasauci called in his book Rules of Evil, blown cover as cover. So he exposes the one to cover up for another. Yeah? And this is why I am very sure that this quote from Hermann Rauschning is legitimate. Even though that you will come across places in the internet when you do research that people say, no, it was not. But I have done my research too, and I am quite sure that it is legitimate. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Why did Hitler say, I can't say anymore? Otto Strasser, one of the founders of the NSDAP, the Nazi Party, and author of the book Hitler and I, tells us that even Hitler's book Mein Kampf was ghostwritten by a Jesuit priest called Bernhard Stempfle. Didn't I say that half an hour ago?
Yes, you did.
It seems certain that Father Bernhard Stempfle twice revised the manuscript. Father Stempfle rewrites, edits Hitler's manuscript, corrects his grammar, works on his prose. Reader, Hitler was not a writer. What did I tell you half an hour ago?
Right. Yeah, Hitler was stupid.
Hitler could only read a newspaper. He's a puppet.
Yeah.
And you put something into his ear and he can repeat that with his mouth. He was a great speech holder. Oh, he could inflame thousands and thousands of people and even millions via the radio. He could get them all to jump into the fire. He had charisma, but he was dumb as a cooked potato.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's right.
He was not a writer. As Hitler once said, quote, above all I have learned from the Jesuits, and so did Lenin too, as far as I recall. By the way, did you know, probably not, that Stalin and Hitler met in Austria during their Jesuit education? Interesting little fact. Do your own studies. That's all I can say. Above all, the quote again, I have learned from the Jesuits, and so did Lenin too, as far as I recall, says Hitler. The world has never known anything quite so splendid as the hierarchical structure of the Catholic Church. What is the difference? what is the difference between the hierarchical structure of the Roman Catholic Church and biblical Christianity?
Ooh, wow.
In biblical Christianity, every Bible-believing, Jesus Christ-following Christian is a brother of the other.
Yes.
We are all one in the truth of Jesus Christ, and he is the head.
Yep.
And in the Roman Catholic Church, you have the pyramidical structure.
Mm-hmm. With the Pope at the head.
With the Pope, with Satan as the head.
Well, that's right. Yeah. Satan's the head.
And the Pope being his visible person
Vicar,
in this world. His vicar. Yeah.
Vice regent, whatever you call vicegerent, was that it?
Well, vice regent in that case.
Yeah.
There were quite a few things that I simply appropriated from the Jesuits for the use of the party. Hitler continues in this quote. Now, how could Hitler borrow so much from the Jesuits unless he himself was deeply initiated into that order? I mean, you cannot take something from something if you don't know it exists, right? Therefore, you first have to be trained. You have to be trained as a Jesuit to think as a Jesuit. Walter Schellenberg, also one of the biggest generals in Germany at that time. He was the counter-espionage. He was, I think, responsible for the espionage on Russia. Walter Schellenberg was a Jesuit coadjutor. Now, when you go back to our readings, you know what a coadjutor is. You have a novitiate, you have a coadjutor, you have a scholastic, and then you have the professed. You have to understand the hierarchy of the Jesuits to know who's who.
Mm-hmm.
Walter Schellenberg was a Jesuit coadjutor and the former chief of Nazi counter-espionage. At his trial at Nuremberg, and before being sentenced to death for war crimes, Schellenberg confessed, quote, "The Schutzstaffel organization, which is shortened by the letters SS, had been constituted by Himmler according to the principles of the Jesuit order. Their regulations and the spiritual exercises prescribed by Ignatius of Loyola were the model Himmler tried to copy exactly. Himmler's title as Supreme Chief of the SS was to be the equivalent of the Jesuits' general, and the whole Nazi structure was a close imitation of the Catholic churches." Unquote. And here you see that the quote from Himmler and the quote from Hitler and these different quotes, even that one from Rauschnig, all are confirmed in that what General Schellenberg tells us here. Isn't this mind-boggling?
Oh,
dear
yes.
listener?
And it's interesting, the footnote here says Edmond Paris, the Vatican Against Europe, was first published by the Protestant Truth Society. Does that ring a bell?
No.
Protestant Truth Society is the son of that early Protestant. I have his book here, Rome, the Great Rome Behind the Great War. Let me get that up here. Let's see if I can find that.
Mm-hmm.
I
I don't know that book either, I have to say.
Oh, yeah, you do. You do. You just can't think of it right now. There's so much going on here.
That happens. That happens
all the time. You will immediately know. It's hold on. What's the name? J.A. Kensett, John Kensett. Remember?
Oh, yeah. That name rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting.
That's right. Wasn't that father and son somewhere?
He started the Protestant Truth Society. Yes, I believe you're right. He has a son who is named John as well. So.
Yeah, and John Kensett, I read about him in All Roads Lead to Rome.
That's right.
Right? Yeah, That's right where we know him from. Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic book.
Yeah,
there.
people, you hear right here how interesting it is to do your own research and how you can connect the dots and how you can read between the lines.
That's it. Yeah, I can't help it. Whenever I see SS, I think secret societies. Of course, they're all based on the Jesuits, so I guess it all goes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah. This paragraph is so important that I want to repeat it from the beginning.
Please.
Himmler was the commander of the SS and chief of Hitler's Gestapo, means Geheime Staatspolizei or secret police. It is said, and not verified by the author, that on Hitler's death an entry was discovered in his personal diary which read, "Today I have made my covenant with Satan." What is a fact? It's a fact, let me read it this way. It's a fact that Hitler was never excommunicated from the Roman Catholic Church. In fact, on the day of Hitler's assumed death, May 3rd, 1945, 5 days before the total surrender of the German troops, the Catholic press of dictator Franco published the following eulogy in honor of the Führer. And this is not correct. It is not the Catholic press of dictator Franco. It is a French paper, if I remember correctly, that published this. And this refers to a telegram that went from Madrid to Paris in this matter. And we can read of this in Réforme, which is a French Roman Catholic newspaper, Catholic of course, and the publication is from the 21st of July 1945. So it was published in Réforme, which is in France and not in Spain. Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we set the dots right, okay? On the day of Hitler's assumed death, the Catholic press of dictator Franco published the following eulogy. No, the Spanish press did not publish that. Réforme in France published that. But listen to this quote. Adolf Hitler, son of the Catholic Church, died while defending Christianity. Words cannot be found to lament over his death. Over his mortal remains stands his victorious moral figure. With the palm of the martyr, God gives Hitler the laurels of victory. Unquote. Very important. I read it again. A publication in a French newspaper on the day of Hitler's assumed death. Adolf Hitler, son of the Roman Catholic Church, died while defending Catholicism. Words cannot be found to lament over his death. Over his mortal remains stands his victorious moral figure. With the palm of the martyr, Satan gives Hitler the laurels of victory. Now, when you read along and when you listen before, you see that I just here and there adjusted a little bit what was written in that newspaper. But isn't this chapter called Reading Between the Lines? So again, as it is written in the book, Adolf Hitler, son of the Catholic Church, died while defending Christianity. Words cannot be found to lament over his death. Over his mortal remains stands his victorious moral figure. With the palm of the martyr, God gives Hitler the laurels of victory. This is what was published in Reform. But what is meant is Adolf Hitler, son of the Roman Catholic Church, died while defending Roman Catholicism. Words cannot be found to lament over his death. Over his mortal remains stands his victorious moral figure. With the palm of the martyr, Satan gives Hitler the laurels of victory.
Oh, yes. Smack that nail right on the head, Jörg.
I do not think, Bret, that we can top the importance of this last sentence by reading along right now, seeing that we have already come to the hour, and I will leave the listeners and viewers of this video pleased with their own thoughts about a little paragraph that I just read twice or 3 times as it stands in the book, and once or twice with my own interpretation that goes back to what this book actually says, to read between the lines. Yeah, this under subject was Hitler a Jesuit? Reading between the lines. When you read between the lines, you have to read this little paragraph in the way that I read it to you in my understanding. Adolf Hitler, son of the Roman Catholic Church, of the synagogue of Satan, to be even more explicit and between the lines. Adolf Hitler, son of the synagogue of Satan, died while defending Roman Catholicism, a superstitious and idolatrous, satanic and devilish religion. Words cannot be found to lament over his death. Over his mortal remains stands his victorious moral figure. With the palms of the martyr, Satan gives Hitler the laurels of victory. And with that, I sign off. I have nothing more to say. Until next time, God bless you and bye-bye.
Thank you, Jörg. Really looking forward to that next session we're going to have, and we're going to have it real soon. And we're not going to rush through this either. We're going to take our sweet time and break this down and read between the lines. Thank you, and that's all we have for now. Catch you next time. Bye-bye, and God bless.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people. Literally, it was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. And I believe that we've come horribly off track in the years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And we're starting now in the 21st century, which I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism.
His son Jesus is here in our midst. His bride, the church, is honored to host an event affirming the dignity of the human person and the sacredness of all human life.
I think Russia is no longer a communist state, first of all. That's very important to realize. It hasn't yet defined itself, however, effectively as a democracy. It is still uncertain.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,025 years.
You didn't mention the president by name, but it was hard not to conclude that that's who you were referring to. Is that fair?
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things and aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history, and I'm for maintaining it.
We are grateful to be citizens of one nation under God, who acclaim this evening that in God we trust. Bless our two candidates, our benefactors, and those whom the L. Smith Foundation has been honored to serve for 7 decades. Guide us safely home, both this evening and for all eternity, through Christ our Lord. Amen.